Welcome to the Powered with Love podcast, the podcast that brings to you what's working on the coalface from people within our community who are defying the odds. The podcast that gives you the ability to power your life with love. I'm the host, Stephen Cromarty, and let's get stuck into today's edition. The director of REA for 10 years, Steve Carroll. Welcome, Steve Carroll.
Well, welcome, Stephen. And of course, I'm no longer the director, but I was the director of sales up until November last year. So joined REA in 2009.
And what I'd like to point out is when you joined, the share prices were under $10. When you left 10 years later, they were over $100. So a lot changed in that space in 10 years. In addition to that, you've been working in this space since 2001. So you've got a good handle not only on where it's come from, but the level of development and the speed as to which things are moving. So Steve, being an expert in the field that you're in, there's no better person to talk to about the topics we're going to talk to today than yourself. So let's get in and let's probably start by getting an understanding as to where things are happening with off-portal sales, with portals in general. Where are they going? What's happening? Let's start there, nice and broad, and let's bring that in.
Yeah, absolutely, Steve. So look, over the 20 years that I've been working in this digital space and within the media space, with a lens on real estate for most of those 20 years, one of the things that I noticed at the turn of this century, right up until probably 2006, 2007, you would be absolutely crazy as a real estate agent. You would be crazy as a seller if you didn't have your property in the local newspaper. Yeah, that was the case right up until 2006, 2007. And I remember when I moved to Australia in 2006, the real estate section in the Courier Mail here in Southeast Queensland was like a telephone directory. It was 100 plus pages packed with properties that were open for inspection that weekend. And what we started to see from 2006 up to probably 2010, we started to see a drift away from print into what we now know is real estate portals such as realestate.com.au and Domain. And what we noticed was we saw that vendors and agents were starting to get confidence around the fact that you could actually sell your property at speed, get the right price without being in print. And so we saw that shift, and that shift was from print to online. We are, without question, at the beginning of another shift where it's the same conversation that sellers and agents are having, but they're not talking about the risk of not being in print. What they're talking about is the risk of not being on a portal. And the alternative is using CRM, using social media, and using alternative channels to obviously sell their property. And so if you were to draw a horizontal line from 2000 to 2020, I think there's been two significant shifts. The shift of print to portal, and now we're seeing the shift from portal to CRMs, to databases, to social media. Now, that doesn't mean, Stephen, that portals are finished. Far from it. I mean, portals have got a massive part to play in real estate over the next 5 to 10 years, but you would be foolish not to believe there is a shift happening.
Look, and from your perspective, Steve, you must feel as though you've walked this road before, just in a different medium. As you said earlier, it wasn't that long ago, even though it was quite some time ago, that we're making that shift from paper to portal. And it all starts with that conversation. And I think with the conversation that we're having at the moment, and not only the conversation, it's the depth of that social space, that social element that it brings, that it took quite some time from the initial conversation with the papers for that shift to take place. One of the things I truly believe, there's two things that'll happen. The speed as to which things move to maybe even if it's just that first stage of marketing, going to the CRM and going to social and being very successful, that shift will be a lot faster and a lot quicker than what we saw from the shift to papers to portal. And the second thing that I think that a lot of people are underestimating is the power and the strength that the portals have. These people, these companies, they have a high level of intelligence within these organizations. The data analytics, the money that they have, the capabilities they have to strengthen their market, the way that they're marketing to the clientele. There's many other avenues that they can go down right now. And you look at what's happening in America, portals are now providing the capability of the portal valuing the property, the portal purchasing the property. So there's all these other things that are happening overseas that haven't even been put on the table and been discussed yet. We're discussing as agents about what's going to happen with off market. I think there's a deeper level of conversation yet to be had yet.
Absolutely. And look, there's a couple of points I'd make. The first thing is this. So job ads in newspapers practically disappeared overnight. The transition from print to online in recruitment ads was really, really quick. It was rapid. I think it caught a lot of publishers, newspaper owners, really on the back foot. I would say that car advertising also shifted quite quickly from print to online. So Seek managed to take that mass transition from print to online quickly. Car sales, ditto. I think that real estate moved a lot slower, and there's a number of reasons why that happened. I think one of the things that we have to be aware of as we move to this transition to more sellers and agents using social media as a way to sell property. And I stress, not necessarily as an alternative to portals, but definitely as a strong method of selling, is the number of millennials in the workplace. So Bernard Soul, leading demographer in Australia, will tell you that right now in 2020, 50% of the workforce were born after 1981. In 2025, 60+% of the workforce would have been born after 1981. So what does that mean? Well, it means two things. Number one, if more and more younger people who are in the workforce, means that more and more of them are going to be involved with the property ecosystem. And the one thing that we know about millennials, or people that were born after 1981, is they are incredibly social media savvy. They're incredibly digital savvy. They are very comfortable with technology. And this is the critical one. People who fall into that bracket will not tolerate service providers that are behind the times with the advancement of tech and digital. And so if you're a real estate professional that is frightened of making the change, you're a little bit reluctant to move with the times, you run the risk of alienating yourself from this mass of millennials that are in the workplace that are going to be starting to buy and sell and lease property.
100%, and you look at what's driving the change with tech, you just need to go right back to what people are being taught at school, and what they're being taught during that education. These people are being taught about artificial intelligence. They're being taught how artificial intelligence is going to change the way we interact as humans with all our experiences. These people are now moving towards a cashless society. They're interacting and transacting completely differently. What they actually see, they see that the way that we transact with each other is it wastes time. It disrupts what it is that they're there to do. So we need to take a moment to identify exactly what you've said. How do these people want to be transacted with? How do they want to be communicated with? Because when someone's making a decision, we need to move them from thinking to feeling. And if we're not even communicating with them or broadcasting what our product is in the right manner, we're going to be missing that audience altogether.
Absolutely. And look, I'll give you a couple of great examples. So my eldest son, Ollie, is 21 in a month's time. And I talked to him about, when you start looking to buy property, Ollie, what will you expect a real estate portal to deliver to you, Ollie? And what he said was, I expect the portal to know the type of property that either I can afford or the type of property that I'm going to be interested in. And what Ollie, my son, says is, I am not going to scroll through a website looking for property that might be suitable for me. I won't want to interact with those portals, Dad. I want a portal that knows what I'm after and serves it up on a plate. Now, we can look at that attitude and think, what a lazy sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? What a lazy approach to life. But the bottom line is, these are the future customers of real estate groups, and we have to understand that. And portals in 2023, I guarantee you, will have to be different to what they are now. Otherwise, millennials won't want to engage with them. And, I grew up with newspapers. My dad was an editor of a newspaper. I cut my teeth in media with newspapers. I met my wife through newspapers. I love newspapers, but newspapers were so slow to react. They were so slow to move that the death of newspapers has probably come earlier as a result of the lethargy towards change. And just maybe back in 2005, 2006, if newspapers had really reimagined the way they published, it would probably still be a really healthy industry right now. And I think that real estate portals are in the same position that newspapers were in 2005, 2006. There's two ways they can go. They can either look at themselves and go, we are invincible and we are amazingly successful. We'll just continue to do what we've always done. That's route one, which is the route that newspapers took. Or they can be really bold and take an Amazon approach and decide that they need to change things up. They need to reinvent the way portals look to ensure that the likes of my son, the likes of your son, Liam, are engaged with portals as we move towards 2025 and beyond.
Well, you know what? I think that big question, where will portals be? Is there a need for portals and will they survive? It really comes down to that. And you've already answered that in what you've just said. And if they stay and do nothing, well, their fate is sealed. If they use the intelligence that they have, use the scope that they have in order to adapt and provide a service that's in line with what their clients are going to expect, well, then there's a chance they'll be here for many years to come. I think for all real estate agents, all businesses, whether or not we're talking real estate specific right now or just business in general, one thing's for certain. Whatever stream of media you're using outside of social, if you're not on social, jump on it, start making sure that these things that you have access to are part of your mainstream process in promoting yourself, promoting your brand, and promoting your business. And I always say this about social, right? Who goes to realestate.com? Who goes to domain.com? People who are doing research on property. Who goes to social? Everyone. So it's a much bigger platform, and it's a platform, if it's used really well, target your audience, it can have a huge upward in a positive way result for yourself and your clients. And there's agents already throughout the country really maximizing this way of marketing, this way of connecting with their audience in such a manner, and the leverage that you can get. Think about this, Steve. Many, many years ago, right, you had to do something pretty miraculous to get noticed, to get famous. Social media has the capability of making everyone a star. And so when you're promoting a property, when you're promoting a product that you're selling, the whole idea is that you can get some traction very quickly if you're very smart about it.
Oh, absolutely. And look, there are some very ordinary real estate professionals. And when I use the word ordinary, I don't mean that in a detrimental way. But, Tom Panos, who's a good mate of mine, 5 years ago, he was just a real estate coach. But what Tom has done to catapult his influence to where he is today is use social media brilliantly. And he's used arguably social media better than any other real estate coach in Australia, probably in the world, which is why Tom is where Tom is today. You look at real estate agents like Lisa Novak. I mean, again, I know Lisa really well, and Lisa won't mind me saying this. Less than 3 years, Lisa Novak's been selling real estate. There are many, many real estate agents in the Northern Beaches who are arguably probably better real estate agents than Lisa. But why is Lisa the most talked about real estate agent in the Northern Beaches? Why does she dominate that area? I tell you why. She's had a really good crack at getting her head around social media. She's not frightened of giving something a go and failing and then bouncing back. And what social media has done, it's enabled people to build their influence really, really quickly. And I think that, my belief is this. I reckon that 75% of real estate professionals are using social media not particularly well at the moment. Imagine what it's going to look like in the next 5 years when real estate agents start using social media really well. How is that going to change the landscape of buying and selling property? Well, we don't know, but it's going to play out.
One thing's for certain, I believe the time is ticking and time has sped up because of COVID. And I'm going to suggest that those that leave it too late, it's going to be a very, very noisy space. It's going to be a very competitive space. And what you're going to need to do in the coming months, in the coming 12 months to stand out on social, it's going to have to have a lot greater impact. You're going to have to be a lot noisier to cut through all the noise in the next 6 to 12 months, 24 months, because, with Lisa Novak, she's been, setting the trend. With Tom Panos, he's been setting the trend. I don't know Tom personally, but I do know that when he decided to go down that track, real estate gym, a lot of people sat back that were in the space that were kind of like the newspaper tactic style of training, where they were criticizing what he was doing. They were looking at what he was doing and they were saying he was devaluing training. So what he's actually done, he's been the trendsetter on changing the way that training has been delivered. And what a very, very successful formula. And again, you've got Lisa Novak, as you said, 3 years in the industry. I interviewed Lisa in Lee Woodward's studio there at the Real Estate Academy. And I said to Lisa at the time, how do you get started? What do you do? She said, I'll show you. You know what I'll show you? She said, get the phone, hold it up, and just start. And I think that's the key thing, just get started. She said to me, they brought in these supposed experts to talk to them about social. So having that thirst for knowledge, having that thirst for innovation. And she said, she didn't start cutting through until they started working with Tom, and Tom said, listen, how about you just do it? Just get in and just do it. And she said that's been the secret to getting started, is getting started.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I'm reading a book at the moment all around the success of Amazon. And, without question, the leading lesson is all about what you've just described. Have a go, fail fast, learn quickly, and don't be embarrassed if people, mock you for what you're trying to achieve. And, one of the best bits of business advice I ever got was from John McGrath, and we were talking about the bike ride. And I said to John, look, John, I want to create this bike ride, and it's going to be, something that we do within the Australian real estate industry. And John challenged me, and he said, why don't you dream bigger, Steve? Why don't you think bigger? And we concluded that, or I concluded as a result of John prompting me to say, right, I'm going to make the biggest real estate charity event in the world. That's what I'm going to do. And John said to me, he said, Steve, if people take the piss, if people laugh at your ambition, you've got your dream at the level it should be. Because if people aren't mimicking, if people aren't mocking, then your dream is not as big as it potentially could be.
Wow.
And I think that what Lisa's doing is Lisa, the fact that she's only been in the business for 3 years is not holding her back. She has this ambition to be the leading real estate social media expert in the world, yeah? And she's not embarrassed about saying that. And if people want to laugh, that just motivates her to keep going.
And what great advice, in relation to setting your goal, your vision, making it big enough. As children, that's what we all do. Children, we identify and we know we just want to be happy. We just want to be self. And at some point we lose our way trying to fit in. And as you've said all the way through this, if you fit in, you're going to be like the newspapers. It's time to stop fitting in and start standing out. I want to finish off on 2 topics. And the 2 things I want to talk about is, number 1, COVID-19, the reset button. Are we going to be fitter and stronger? I want to talk about that briefly. And then, of course, I want to talk about Digital Live. I want to talk about Hands Across the Water. I want to talk about the great work that you're doing there and encourage as many people as possible to come along in 2021. But before we get to that one, COVID-19, the reset button, fitter and stronger. Let's get stuck into that one. What's your opinion on if we're going to be fitter or stronger? I guess we need to be very, very careful and empathetic on this particular topic because we've probably had a level 1. Now, if someone's lost a family member, if your business has hit the wall, it's a level 10 for you. And my heart goes out to you, I understand it's a level 10. But as a country, on a whole, it's been a level 1. That concerns me. It worries me for the innovation of Australian businesses, the depth and strength of our ongoing economy, because those places that have been hit a bit harder, okay, and I don't wish that had happened. That'd be a pretty sick thing to wish. But I'm just wondering, are we going to get in and innovate at the level that we need to? Are we going to get in and pivot at the level that we need to in order to not only look after ourselves locally, but nationally, the greater good of our country? Are we going to be innovating as hard as, say, the countries that have had no choice but to do things completely different than what they've been doing? Steve, I'm going to hand that one over to you.
Yeah, massive question. Look, I think there's no doubt that if we were to rank countries on who responded as a country to COVID-19 best and worst, Australia and New Zealand are going to be right up there in the top five, absolutely. And my home country, the UK, is going to be right at the bottom. There's absolutely no doubt about that. I think there's another league table that we'll be able to look at in 24 months' time, and that will be when we look at the industries within Australia. So we're now talking 2022. So imagine we're in 2022, and we're looking back and looking at the industries that have used the pause button or the reset button that COVID threw up. Who's responded, reimagined the best, and who hasn't. I think that you're going to see the travel industry right up there for reinvention, reimagination, repurposing, responding, and so on and so forth. So I think if we're in 2022, I think you'll find that the travel industry would have done an amazing job. Why? Because that industry has been absolutely smashed.
Oh, slaughtered.
And it's really a case of, well, we stand up and we fight or we die. It's as simple as that. I'm not sure where real estate will fit on that league table. My worry is I think the majority of real estate agents and real estate businesses will just return to the way it was all done prior to COVID. And if that's the case, I hope I'm proven wrong, but if that's the case, that will be a great shame because, Sir Winston Churchill said, no one wants a crisis. No one wants a crisis, but crises come. And when they do, make sure you don't waste that opportunity. And I do feel that what I'm seeing now is more real estate agents returning to how they were doing things prior to Valentine's Day, as opposed to real estate agents who are absolutely pivoting and trying new stuff. But we'll see. And obviously, programs like Digital Live, which is a 12-week education program that I run, kicking off in October, is designed to try and help real estate principal and agents pivot, reimagine to the absolute max. And so hopefully I'm doing my little bit to make sure that we're up there on that league table and we're not mid-table or worst bottom of the table.
Well, you're most definitely doing more than your little bit. And anyone that's listening to this, I'd strongly suggest that you get to one of your sessions with Digital Live, because a lot of the things that we've been discussing today, you've got some of the best people in the country on those topics providing that information, as well as yourself, on how to repivot, how to reimagine. And sometimes it's difficult to reimagine what it is that you can't see. So for someone to bring that vision forward, to bring that more up center and up front for you, it gives you the ability to see what it is that you can't see. One thing that I'd like to talk about, I was very fortunate to be interviewing Suzette Noble. So who's Suzette Noble? She's one of the most awarded leaders that worked in the Disney business, and she's currently contracting directly to Krispy Kreme at the moment. So she's retired from a leader at one of the highest levels in Disney and now working for Krispy Kreme. She was working out of New York, the epicenter. Talk about reinventing, talk about pivoting. We're talking about more than just donuts here. And the ship that Donald Trump welcomed into the harbor there, into the port at New York, one of their campaigns, they're sitting there, they're saying, we've got to reimagine, we've got to pivot, we've also got to show heart, we've got to do acts of kindness in the midst of all of this. What can we do? So one of the challenges that was thrown to Suzette was, could you imagine that ship that has 300 beds? Could you imagine all the workers? Could you imagine the Navy SEALs? Could you imagine what everyone's going under right now? Imagine if we could inspire hope in these people. Imagine if we could show them that the nation's here for them. Maybe Krispy Kreme could somehow do that. So they got access to that ship and they got everyone serviced with love with the Krispy Kreme product. They went down to NYPD. They went down to what we were seeing on the news, on social media, where they were converting these places to 1,000 beds. They had all the support workers personally packaged, personally delivered, following protocol. But here's what she said. They estimated that in New York alone, they were going to lose $4 million. They lost $2 million by this one simple campaign. But as she said, they pivoted, they moved, they responded. They took on an onus responsibility to what was going on. And even though we're only talking Krispy Kreme donuts, I just might have you know that the person she's personally consulting to bought that business for $1.4 billion. So we're talking someone that's consulting to a huge business that was navigating it through it in its epicenter. And like you've said all the way through this, Steve, we need to make sure that we're not being outclassed by donuts.
Absolutely, that's a great way of putting it.
I look at that story and I go, you think about it, right? The president of America can't get on that ship. Well, Suzette Noble got her team on that ship. And you got to have, when she was throwing that challenge, when I was interviewing her and her husband, Norm Noble, who he is the most awarded leader in the Disney resorts. He was running 3 of the resorts at the same time. And he said, you know what, Steve, when Suzette's throwing a challenge, you step aside. And when they said, imagine if we could get on the ship, she said, I've already imagined it. So so that's a pretty big thing. For those of you that don't understand, no civilian ever gets near that ship unless you're a patient. Last but not least, I thought we should talk about the amazing work you do with Digital Live and Hands Across the Water. Steve, again, that's your area. That's where your passion is. Throwing that one back over to you.
Yeah, well, look, we've I got to see some photographs yesterday of the learning centre that you and I were both in 2 or 3 months ago. If you recall, 2 or 3 months ago, that learning centre was just a skeleton of a building. It now has windows. It now has a roof. And in the next couple of months, there will be orphaned children learning in that centre, courtesy of the Australian real estate industry. Because the Australian real estate industry, either through supporting the bike ride, either riding the bike ride or sponsoring somebody to do the bike ride, or attending the Digital Live education program, has contributed to the education of kids who otherwise wouldn't have got education. And, there's a great quote from Nelson Mandela: education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. And without question, a lot of the world needs changing right now, and education is without question the way forward. And, I think it's a great way to wrap up this podcast by saying there will be girls at the age of 15 and 16 who will leave this orphanage who, if it wasn't for the fact of the generosity of the real estate industry, would just fall into prostitution or drugs, because that really is about the choice that they've got. What we'll do through them going through this education program, through the classroom, we've only built one. But hey, look, if we're going to make this the biggest real estate charity event on the planet, who says we can't build 10 classrooms over the next 10 years? What it means is 15 and 16-year-old girls will have a choice. They'll be able to turn their back on prostitution, turn their back on drugs. They'll be able to get a job because they'll be computer literate. They'll know how to use technology. And that, I think, is a great, contribution that this magnificent Australian real estate industry that we're both in has made. And that's what Digital Live is all about.
And let me tell you, to put some more context to it, why I believe it's important to get out there. I was speaking to my cousin, and he's very high up in the medical world here in our country. And he gets it, like he said to me, our government, the way that we are as a community, the resources that we have, there are choices for people here. There are facilities and programs here for everyone, should you want to be part of that program or that facility. But over there, someone said to me outside of my cousin, why are you doing this? And I said, well, over there, the government has nothing in place for these people, for these children. If it wasn't for the likes of Claire Baines, if it wasn't for the likes of Peter Baines, wasn't for the likes of people like Steve Carroll promoting it, people like Lee Woodward speaking it wherever he goes, these children, and in particular the Baineses, these children would be left on the streets. They wouldn't have the medication they need to even get them to adulthood. They would perish. And as a matter of fact, from my memory, one of the ladies, phenomenal lady, wow, absolutely heroic, that is over at Home Hug, prior to the assistance of the Baineses, her and one of the students, one of the people that have been helping her, they had buried how many children, Steve?
Over 1,000 children that the head of Mayfield,
yes,
the nun who had given her life to this particular home that we cycled in, had actually buried over 1,000 children.
And we're talking personally. We're talking about...
What Mayfield told Peter Baines was, Peter, before you and Hands Across the Water came to the rescue, I had to make the decision between food and medicine. And the kids could not have both. They had to either have food or medicine. And she said, what we now can do as a result of Hands Across the Water and obviously supporters of Hands Across the Water like Digital Live is we can have both. We can have medicine, we can have food, and hey, look, now we can have education. So we've gone from 1 to 3. And that's the power of the work that Peter and Claire have done. And that's why me and you and all the other people that you've talked about are jumping on our bikes again in 2021, and we'll continue the good work.
Steve, thanks for your time today. Appreciate the chat. We've solved the problems of the world. We've worked on innovation. We're drumming up the support on building what will be most definitely the biggest charity in the world that real estate agents have ever supported. Thank you for your time. Appreciate your thoughts and your contribution.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much, Stephen.
If you like what you've heard today, remember to subscribe and rate us on iTunes. If you discovered us on YouTube, remember, hit that bell so you can be notified when these new episodes become available. Leave a comment, and we look forward to bringing you the latest material that's going to power your life with love.